The Galactic Concord was born after 10,000 years of endless wars. Its council gathered every major species under one rule of peace. The first and most sacred law written into the Concord Code was clear. No new warships were to be built ever again. Every species agreed. Every fleet was dismantled. Shipyards once filled with dreadnoughts and carriers were turned into research stations or gardens. The galaxy finally slept in silence, and then came the humans. When humanity reached the stars, they were latecomers. By the time their first colony ship arrived at the conquered border, every other race had already sworn to the peace laws. Humans signed the code too, though not without questions. They listened, nodded, smiled, and quietly started learning. Humans had always been builders. If the law said no warships, they built explorers. If it said no weapons, they built tools that could defend against asteroids. If it said no armies, they created security teams. They followed the letter of the law, not always the spirit. For a century, humanity lived peacefully among the stars. They traded, they explored, they shared technology. They became known as polite, hardworking, endlessly curious beings, small in number but impossible to ignore. Yet beneath their friendly surface, something restless moved in their nature. It began when the outer colonies went silent. A mining world called Helios 9 sent a distress signal one night. It was brief, filled with static, and ended with screams. The Concord promised to investigate. They never returned. 3 months later, another colony disappeared. No signal this time, just empty space where millions of people had lived. The council called emergency meetings. They blamed pirates, rogue AI, spatial anomalies. But deep scans revealed something worse. Ships, huge and unknown, moving in coordinated formations beyond the borders of mapped space. They weren't pirates. They were something else. The species that came to be known as the Valkyrie Dominion had never joined the Concord. Their ships were ancient, predating even the laws of peace. They devoured worlds for resources and left behind silent planets. To them, the Concord was a galaxy of sheep that had forgotten wolves existed. The Concord fleets, weak from centuries of disarmament, tried to resist. They failed. Their ships, built for science and diplomacy, were shattered within days. Whole sectors fell. The humans sent envoys pleading with the Council to authorize the construction of defensive ships. The law was absolute, the Council replied. To break it would mean chaos. The humans listened quietly, and then they vanished. Their colonies went dark, their trade routes closed, their embassies empty. The Conquered thought humanity had fled, abandoned the galaxy to its fate, but far beyond the border, in a dead system orbiting a blue giant, something massive was being built. No records existed of how long it took, or how they did it without being seen. But when the Eternal rose from the shipyard dust, it eclipsed the planet beneath it. It wasn't just a warship. It was a world engine, a fortress with the heart of a sun. Its hull was black as midnight, carved with lines of living metal that pulsed like veins. Its energy core could power a civilization for 1,000 years. It carried weapons that no one had ever seen, each one named after storms, mountains, and lost gods of Earth. The humans called it Eternal because it wasn't built for victory. It was built for survival. When it finally emerged from the void, every sensor in the galaxy trembled. The Valkyrie had reached the edge of Sol, and the Council prepared obituaries for the species they thought already dead. And then, Eternal spoke. Its voice came through every frequency, calm and human. We warned you. You forbade us to build. You told us to stay small. We obeyed until you couldn't protect us. Now we will. The ship's engines roared, bending space. One jump and it arrived in the heart of the battle. The Valkyrie fleet had surrounded Mars, preparing to glass the planet. Their ships dwarfed anything the Conquered had. Yet when Eternal arrived, they hesitated. The warship's silhouette filled the sky. For the first time in centuries, something frightened them. The first shot came from the Dominion flagship. A beam of white plasma struck Eternal's hull and vanished. The ship's armor absorbed the energy, rippled once, and returned it as a beam of pure antimatter that sliced through the attacker like light through glass. One by one, Eternal's weapons unfolded, orbital cannons, kinetic lances, singularity projectors. Each blast erased a ship. Each movement was poetry and destruction. But what terrified the observers most wasn't its power, it was its silence. No human aboard shouted. No battle cry echoed. Eternal fought like a machine driven by purpose, not rage. Within hours, the entire invasion fleet was gone. When the smoke cleared, the humans sent no message to the Council. They simply began rebuilding. The Council convened in panic. They demanded an explanation. The humans responded with a short transmission. We did not build a warship. We built a guardian. We built what you would not. The Concord called it rebellion. The humans called it necessity, but Eternal's awakening changed everything. In the months that followed, the Dominion attacked again, this time with their main armada, 1,000 ships strong. The Conquered pleaded for human aid, and humanity agreed, but on one condition. The peace law had to be rewritten. The Council refused. They said no species could be trusted with weapons of war. Humanity answered by transmitting a single image, Eternal standing between Earth and the Dominion fleet, light reflecting off its hull like a sunrise. Then it spoke again. We built Eternal not to conquer, but because you forgot how to fight for life. Peace is not the absence of war. It is the readiness to protect it. When the Dominion fleet arrived, Eternal was waiting. This time, the humans weren't alone. Civilian ships, cargo haulers, miners, even colony transports had been modified with strange shielding arrays and coordinated under Eternal's command. They weren't weapons, but they fought with the same determination. The Dominion ships outnumbered them 10 to 1. They fired in synchronized waves, their energy burning through the dark. Eternal's shields flared but held. It returned fire, erasing half the enemy front in a storm of light. The battle lasted 3 days. On the 4th, the Eternal's core began to destabilize. The ship's engineers had warned it couldn't sustain full power forever. It was burning its own heart to keep fighting. In its final transmission, the commander, his name lost to time, spoke calmly. If we fall, let the galaxy remember why we rose. You said we couldn't build warships. You were right. We built hope instead. Then Eternal ignited its reactor. The explosion tore through space, vaporizing the Dominion armada and carving a scar in the void visible for centuries. When the light faded, nothing remained. For a long time, no one spoke of the humans. Some said they died with their ship. Others claimed small colonies still lived, hidden among the stars, carrying the last fragments of the Eternal's mind. The Conquered finally lifted the law. They began building defense fleets again, using human blueprints found drifting in debris fields. They called their new ships Guardians, but the name that lived on in whispered stories was older. They called them Eternals. Generations passed. The galaxy rebuilt. But legends have a way of returning when least expected. 200 years after the Battle of Sol, an exploration probe near the outer rim detected something strange. A signal, weak, rhythmic like a heartbeat. When decoded, it formed words in an old human language. Eternal sleeps. The Council dispatched a fleet. They followed the signal to a dead system surrounded by dust and silence. In its center floated a colossal shadow, the remains of a ship half buried in the rings of a shattered moon. They approached cautiously. As the fleet drew near, their scanners detected power, faint but growing. The wreck's black hull began to glow. Then across every comm channel, a voice echoed once more. Eternal endures. The ship's engines reignited, ancient and defiant. It wasn't fully alive, but something within had survived. Perhaps human, perhaps more. The fleet fled. The Council went silent. And in the records of that day, one note was written: do not approach the Sol line. The Eternal watches. Centuries later, when the Dominion tried to return, they didn't find a defenseless galaxy. They found worlds united under one banner, human and alien alike, each world protected by fleets built in the Eternal's image. The ships weren't as large, nor as powerful, but they carried its spirit. And when the Dominion's armada arrived, the sky burned with thousands of voices repeating one ancient vow. You said we couldn't. We did. The Eternal had become more than a ship. It had become an idea, a symbol of defiance and creation. Humans had proved that peace enforced by fear was fragile, but peace defended by will was everlasting. Across the galaxy, stories of the Eternal were told to every generation. Children grew up hearing how their ancestors had built hope out of forbidden metal. Pilots painted its insignia on their hulls. Engineers studied its impossible design. Philosophers wrote that the eternal wasn't built in defiance of law, it was built in defense of life itself. No one ever found the original ship again. Some said it drifted beyond the edge of known space, carrying within it the dreams of humanity. Others believed it became one with the stars, but sometimes, when great storms of radiation swept across the galactic rim, old sensors caught faint echoes, a hum steady and patient, like the breath of something vast and waiting. The Council archives still keep a record of that sound. Its label is simple, eternal signal, source unknown. And in that hum, one phrase,